Today I want to talk about the breakup journey. Specifically, I'm going to read you an entry from my journal 2 months post breakup. Let me be clear, do not feel bad for me. I'm in a great place in my life at the moment. I'm very happy and I've dealt with the breakup. I've worked on the things that I need to work on, and I continue to this day to work on myself. So I hope that I can pass that experience on to you today. Welcome back to the Love Fix, guys. It's Nick, as always, doing my best to tell the truth, cut through the bullshit, so you can get through your breakups as healthily as possible. If you need my help with your personal breakup situation, you can email me at thelovefix20@gmail.com, and the details are in the description below. So, last night, I stumbled across journal entry whilst clearing out some old files on my phone, and I decided to read the journal entry. So after reading it last night, it reminded me of how far I have come, the progress I have made, and that I'm just comfortable with who I am now. I'm going to give you a brief comparison to where I was to where I am now. So, the following journal entry is 2 months post breakup. It's the 20th of July, 2020. I feel awful. Separation anxiety is in full swing, and I have that horrible sinking feeling in my guts. 2 months into the breakup, and up until now, I have been relatively okay. I have felt more relief than anything else up until now. But I have now collected all of my things from my ex's place and moved into my new place. It has put somewhat of a finality on the situation. Yesterday I cried. I cried a lot. It was as if the final lock to the floodgate was removed and every bit of emotion broke through. I was crying uncontrollably to the point of sobbing. At that point, I wanted to reach out to my ex just to hear her voice, just to maintain any kind of connection. I still feel that as I write this, but I have to stay the course. I can't and I won't reach out to her. I have to step out onto the tracks, face what is coming, and let it hit me. I can't run from it because sooner or later it will chase me down and hit me even harder. I am trying to remind myself why we broke up, why the relationship died. Although I know the reasons, I can't seem to hold on to that right now. I seem to be having the fading effect bias due to high levels of anxiety. Although my ex initiated the breakup, it was me who ended it. I wanted to work on things, but she didn't, therefore forcing my hand to end it. She loaded the gun, held it to my head, but got me to pull the trigger. So I guess in a way, it was her who dumped me. We couldn't seem to reach a compromise regarding the baby. This was 95% of all of our disagreements. Add to that my ex's avoidant attachment traits, where she would avoid difficult conversations that had to be had. And at times, she wouldn't even acknowledge or recognize that what she was doing or saying was hurting my feelings. And I think this is because of her avoidant traits. This ultimately led to me not feeling like a part of the family. Me, her, and the baby. At times, it reached a point where I had very little say in what would happen with the day-to-day life of the baby. I felt like an outsider when I was living there. My ex cites the main cause of her feelings changing from an incident that happened with the baby. The baby was being particularly out of sorts one day, and I put her into her bedroom. My ex never liked the baby crying too long, but I always try to explain to her that if you don't see the discipline through, they will not learn. The atmosphere got very tense, and I realised that I should have maybe backed off. The baby started to kick the door, and I raised my voice, which I normally never did with her. I think the pressure of the lockdown just added to the frustration. As I entered the room to tell the baby not to kick the door caught her on the forehead, which made her cry even harder, which made the situation 10 times worse. It didn't hit hard, the doors are thin and there was no bruising, but I have felt and still feel very bad about it. My ex obviously was very upset and she stepped in. I was angry and upset because she wasn't supporting me, but I understand her feelings now. I don't believe this to be the only reason. Rather, it was a catalyst for all the disagreements regarding the baby leading up to this point. The lockdown 100% made things a lot worse. We were on top of each other with very little escape or external stimulus. We couldn't even escape to a family or friend's house. When we finally did have the freedom to move around, it was already too late. The atmosphere was so terrible in the house. The days just blurred together and I could feel the relationship failing. I tried to warn my ex many times and I begged her to talk to me so we could sort it out. When she finally talked, it was too late. If only she had told me weeks before how she was feeling, we might have been able to save it. If only I had told her maybe a few months before that my feelings were changing, we may have been able to save it. If only I was more patient and I tried to appreciate her feelings more, we might have been able to save it. That's not to say I didn't make mistakes. I made plenty of mistakes, the biggest of which was not listening properly. Listening to respond, not to understand. I would often shut down arguments just because I wanted to be right. I now understand how this must have made her feel, like she didn't have a voice and how I was not understanding her thoughts and feelings. She is a first-time mother and is very much still figuring things out. Maybe I did not appreciate how tough it must have been for her at times. I am taking steps to improve on listening to understand, not to just respond or wait for my turn to speak. It's not easy, but I'm working on it. I appreciate and accept that this is where I failed mostly. I'm trying to look at this breakup as an opportunity to improve myself and be better than I was. It's never easy looking at oneself and criticizing. In fact, it's damn hard. Right now, I wish I could have one more conversation with her. I'm not even sure what I would say. I guess I would say I am sorry we could not work things out. I am sorry that I failed as a partner and as a father. I'm sorry I did not have the tools to listen properly. I'm sorry you did not want to fight for us, but I forgive you. That's the end of the journal entry, guys. So, what can we take out of that? What is the lesson here? The lesson here is taking accountability for what we got wrong and working on the stuff that we wasn't so good at. Over the last 16 months, I've worked tirelessly to be a better listener, to engage with people, to listen to understand, not to just respond. Knowing when to back off. Knowing when to just let people speak and let them have their turn. And for someone like me who is logical, scientifically based, I deal with facts, that's been a tough journey for someone like me to be more empathetic, to be more understanding. But it's also shown me and given me time to understand and realize how much my ex, in fact, got wrong. It wasn't just me. She could have listened when I asked her to listen. She could have had the conversation with me when I asked her to have the conversation with me. She could have sat down and talked it out with me when I said, hey, look, this is failing right now and it's going to cause a breakup. And even though back then I didn't have as much knowledge, experience or awareness with regards to relationships or breakups or conflict resolution, I still had enough awareness to know that something wasn't right, to know that my feelings were changing, to know that her feelings were changing. And I didn't do the typical get clingy or act with 200% interest. In fact, I did try to back off. I did try to have the conversation, but I was too focused on getting my point across. I was too focused on how I felt. But this is why journaling is so powerful, and this is why I encourage everyone that I talk to one-to-one on the phone, journal. And whoever's listening today, you should be journaling because it provides an outlet. to get your thoughts and feelings onto paper or to speak into a voice app. And it just acts as a release valve just to get that anxiety out, that fear, just whatever's coming out, so it doesn't explode one day. It also provides a before and after picture of where you were and where you are. I remember the day I wrote that journal. I remember exactly how I felt. And I remember thinking that my whole world had come crashing down. That's the day it hit me. That's when it really, really hit me. And now I look at today. I look at how well I'm doing, how good I feel. I'm in physically good shape. Mentally, I'm in good shape. I've met new friends. I'm doing new things. I'm going on new adventures. And whilst breaking up would have never have been my first choice, and I still think today it could have been solved. I still think it could have been worked out. But I always remind myself of this when I have any doubt. Why the fuck would I want to be with someone who didn't stick by me when we hit the first bump in the road? Because anyone can do a relationship when it's easy and when it's working. That's the easy part. Anyone can do that. But when you hit the bump, when you hit the twist in the road and maybe you have to go in a different direction, when you have intimacy problems or communication problems or whatever, financial, it's when you actually sit down with your partner with that brutal, honest communication and say, hey, I love you, but there are some things that are not quite right at the moment and we need to work on it. And I want to work with you. I want to know how you feel. I want to understand where you are. And I want to tell you how I feel and where I am. And if we can do that in a mature way, maybe we can find a middle ground, a compromise that suits both of us. And maybe we don't get everything that we want, but at least both of us gets a little something. And that's what a relationship is about. It's about brutal, honest communication. It's about compromise. It's about taking care of your needs, as well as taking care of your partner's needs. It's a two-way street. It's a partnership. And the biggest lesson that I've learned out of this breakup is if you avoid conflict, it just becomes 10 times worse down the line. So if you do have a grievance with your partner or anybody in your life, don't let it fester. Because if I'm guilty of anything, is that I brushed too much under the carpet when I should have confronted it. And confronting is not a bad thing. You can confront things in a positive way. You don't need to shout. You don't need to use bad words. You can talk like adults. And that is one of the biggest reasons why that relationship failed. Also, I had issues with validation and anxiety, which I'm happy to say that I've worked on and I've pretty much solved. But sadly, sometimes we have to learn the lesson the hard way before we actually do anything to change. And I'm going to leave it there, guys. Always remember, you're worth it and you're enough. I'll see you on the other side.